All right, hello YouTube, Mucklick here, and by popular demand, today we did Heal Untamed with Mace. Shout out to the one guy in the comment section on the last 17 videos that has been like, 19 days waiting on Heal Untamed Mace video. Here it is. The day has come. All right, so Untamed, I am more fluent with than many of the other builds I've recently tried. I played a bit of Staff Untamed when it became a thing not so long ago. For anyone new to the game, it's relatively new as far as healers go. It was only when Untamed got access to the Druid's weapon of Staff that they could make a healing build, which happened in Secrets of the Obscure when the latest expansion came out. Now, Staff Untamed, the reason it had to use two staves and it just weapon swapped from one staff to another staff is because when an Untamed does their weapon swap, their next attack is an ambush. And the ambush does a very big flashy thing. So if you swap from staff to staff, you're always doing the staff ambush, which is a massive amount of damage and healing in an area and puts protection on allies and blinds enemies and removes boons on enemies if you've got the right trade for it. A lot of cool stuff. However, because you're running double staves, you do not have the actual utility of a second weapon set. For anyone who's curious, if you use a cooldown, like if I use staff 5, then I swap to another staff, staff 5 is still on cooldown. They share the same cooldown. That you don't get out of that. But now that Ranger has access to the Mace, or Maces, the main hand Mace is very good for support. Druid's using that, as I've mentioned in one of my previous recent videos. And so, how is it on Untamed? Well, let me try to show you. This is a extreme damage field. You know what? I'm actually going to adjust environment, turn this off just to prove it, and turn this back to extreme, and I really hope I don't embarrass myself here. Noxxi, cut this part out. I'm gonna start with the Pet Unleashed and me and Staff, and we are going to go in and port in, weapon swap to me, ambush Staff, swap to Mace, ambush Mace, 2, 3, 5, 4, 2 for boons, and just do this for a second. I'll Healing Spring down. I'm using Healing Spring because it can do a lot of condition cleansing for teammates, which this build doesn't really have a ton of. And we're using just the 2 and the 3. We're just having a grand old time here. Health is actually starting to get low. Going to Staff ambush. This ambush. I could have used some other skills there, but I didn't. I'll come back to that. And I'm going to do this until I get back to Staff. Now, if you look at my boons, they're looking very nice right now. And there we go. All right, zoom out of there for a second. Okay, so we were providing might, quickness, fury, swiftness, regen, some other stuff. The alacrity is coming from the technician to simulate me being grouped with someone who provides alacrity. So I was, in a extreme damage field and keeping all the boons up, no problem. Let's talk about how this works. So essentially, by having the Mace instead of the staff was providing healing and prot. Mace 3 also provides prot, but you also get a bit of regen from the Mace 2, as well as some healing, and the Mace 1 provides a bit of vigor. Now, you could combine the Mace 1 with Water Spirit to get full uptime on vigor. Vigor is a helpful boon, but it is the least important of the boons, and I prefer to bring Healing Spring because there's no cleansing. Druid has cleansing in here. There's no cleansing of conditions in here for your team. So Healing Spring is team-wide condition cleanse. So that's why I brought the Healing Spring. By using the Mace skills, you get some CC, you get some prot, you get some regen, a little bit of vigor. Warhorn 5 gives you Fury, Might, Swiftness, and regen also if you're running the Windborn Notes trait. And then, back on Staff, of course, you've got some projectile block, you've got some healing, and you've got some more prot of time and more healing. So essentially every, I think, 9 or 10 seconds, whenever you see this little, well, you don't have to stare at that icon. You can, as I recently learned, you can look at the weapon swap. You would swap from the, I need to be in combat for this to work. There we go. All right. You would swap from Pet Unleash to You Unleash. Your next attack would ambush, then weapon swap, and your next attack ambushes again, because this trait gives you an ambush on weapon swap. So that means every 9 seconds, you can do 2 ambushes. And those ambushes do a ton of healing, damage, and boons all around you. So because a lot of your healing is centered around the ambushes, it's kind of like, your ambushes, a huge amount of healing around you, and then it starts to kind of fade out, and then ambush again, and your healing looks like this, all right? So it's not to say you ever go down to 0 healing. You always have regen pumping and some other stuff. However, your big healing is like that. It's just a constant, chart looking like that, almost like a heartbeat monitor. So that's how that works. Now, with this build, you have a cool amount of freedom, actually. You do have the freedom to choose what utilities you want. I found, after testing it out, with Mace 3 and Staff 1 Ambush providing prot, and also Invigorating Bond provides a bit of prot as well as some more vigor, you could... It was a tight rotation, but you could keep prot up without using Stone Spirit. So I brought this for Aegis. This build's weakness, no stability, similar to Scourge. This has great damage for a healer, very good healing output, every boon you would want a good healer to have, except not full uptime on vigor and the stability thing. No stability. So what I did is I brought the Jungle Stalker pet just to make sure those might stacks stayed at 25. I had its roar on auto cast to trigger this as much as possible. And whenever I saw a big attack coming, I would either throw Stone Spirit to Aegis the party to block it, or pet swap to White Tiger and have it roar. So I had two sources of Aegis. The White Tiger's roar gives Aegis as well. So I had two sources of Aegis, but no stability. Because I have the freedom to use whatever utilities I want down here, however, the toolbox down here to choose utilities from is not as good as Guardian or Chronos. They've got a lot of neat stuff in there. A lot of this stuff will not help a party out, but there is some cool things. One, Search and Rescue, great for pugs. It basically fully revives the nearest downstate teammate. It just takes a few seconds, and it will pull them out of something bad if they're downstate in something really bad. Bone Skinner is a classic example. The puddles there. Protect Me is kind of like a poor man's stability. It stun breaks your whole party. It's a 5-man stun break. So if your whole party gets knocked down because you failed to Aegis something, you can hit that and it instantaneously will stun break your whole group. And it also gives you some barrier, but you could replace that with anything in here. However, that also brings to mind the next topic. Nothing in Untamed skills helps support. Untamed was not designed to be a support. So the heal skill for Untamed, the utility skills for Untamed, and the elite skill for Untamed, I don't really see a way that any of those help with support. All the stability that a druid can bring to its group, which isn't a lot, there's two sources of it, they're on druid skills. They are not on ranger skills. So Untamed does not have access to those. If Soul Beast was able to provide quickness, which it's not, they could provide stability through, what is it called, Doyak Stance Share, but they don't have that. So you are providing quickness, you're providing all the essential boons. I gave up Vigor Uptime to bring Healing Spring because other than Healing Spring, the Condition Cleanse on this class is almost non-existent. For your team, again, because we're talking about a healer. Healing Spring basically does up to 60 condition cleanses on the area around you over 10 seconds. It is absurd. So what that means is when you see conditions that need to be cleansed, and this is your only source of condition cleanse, you're just like, a godly cleanser in that area. And then when it's on cooldown, you're just like, oh man, I hope no one has a problem, until it comes back up. But that's kind of how it is. The only other condition cleanse I really saw is if you bring the Brown Bear, which that has got a condition cleanse roar that you can use if you fancy doing that. Let's see, Pug Life. Let's talk about Pug Life. I still was able to bring in this build my favorite traits for pugging on Druid, which is Allies Aid, which is when you start reviving someone, your pet joins in. So it's like 2 people reviving instead of 1. So double the speed of revive if you alone are trying to get someone back up. Or you could just tap the F key and then immediately interrupt it and go do something else, and your pet will finish getting them up. I was able to bring Allies Aid and Search and Rescue. We don't have Glyph of the Stars on this, so I brought Spirit of Nature, which is an AoE res, but it has a 2-minute cooldown. Glyph of the Stars has like a 48-second one. So much longer cooldown than the Druid version, but still a 5-man res. Just today when I was trying this out, I was able to save the group I was in on Bone Skinner. I think 3 or 4 people went down, and I threw that and managed to snap them all up, and we continued on. And it felt great. It was great to have that skill there, even if it is a much longer cooldown. Felt similar, because the cooldown, it feels similar to having like Warrior Banner there, because it also has a very long cooldown. Yeah, so you got freedom of utility, although if you're on a fight with no conditions, I would probably bring Water Spirit to bring more vigor uptime, but if you're on any fight with any conditions, bring Healing Spring, because you don't have much else to work with there. It basically plays the same as the old Staff Untamed, but you are now bringing full uptime of Fury, because Warhorn is now giving Fury, and Swiftness, because the Warhorn is helping with Swiftness. And if you had any trouble keeping the Might at 25 before, it's easier now, because the Warhorn helps with Might, because earlier the Staff Ambush from this was giving some might, but now you're also getting even more than you were before. So might is easier. You've got the Fury now, you've got Swiftness now, you've got a few more CCs, because this weapon kit has CCs on it, but the Staff one does not, other than a very, very soft small CC on the Staff 4, which doesn't really count for break bars. And then you still got this stuff over here. So most of it is the same as before, plus Fury and Swiftness. Again, no stability would be the big con for this, but it does have 2 sources of Aegis. So if you're skillful, you can can work with that. It has 3 ways of reviving downstate people: Allies Aid trait, Search and Rescue if you bring it, and Spirit of Nature if you bring it. And this one is Area of Effect. So that is really awesome. It has a more projectile block. All right, so Staff 5 on Druid is this little wall, and this wall will turn projectiles into very small amounts of healing. It's very negligible, 194 by the way, but it does stop enemy projectiles. Very useful on something like, Dagda in Cosmic Observatory. However, the pet, which doesn't require you to have a certain weapon in your hand, because remember, this class is swapping weapons not when needed, but on a rotation. It is constantly weapon swapping. So there will be moments where you need to hit a break bar and you're in Staff, or you need to block projectiles and you're in Mace Warhorn. And when that happens, you can just move Unleash to your pet and use Enveloping Haze. So on a 20-second cooldown, you have a gigantic projectile block on demand. That's a plus. That is awesome about this. Another plus about this build is you do more damage than a typical support. I had RTPS running during the strikes I did, so I can show some of that on the screen now. But in general, this build will be doing 2 to 3, maybe if you're in an AoE situation, because the ambushes are AoE, sometimes 4 times the DPS of some other supports. I would say that the top DPS supports of what I've tested so far are going to be Mechanist, Untamed, and maybe Willbender, although Willbender does way less healing. That was a whole different thing. But there's another video on that. I did have as a con written down about this class, watching for this icon was a pain, and this icon right here shows when you can ambush again. So if I do this, you notice that icon disappears, it's gone. And then you would wait 10 seconds and that icon would reappear. However, someone in chat pointed out to me that that icon has about the same cooldown as weapon swap. So if you unleash pet, then unleash self, use an ambush, and then weapon swap and use another ambush, as soon as your weapon swaps back up, you can, without looking for that icon down here, just watch the weapon swap, you can do that whole sequence again. So that made my life a little bit easier. I think similar to Warrior with Soldier's Focus, the user interface could be better. I would love to see that, because you've got the Unleash thing up here. You could absolutely have something up here for showing that up here. But just for anyone who is thinking about playing Untamed, but you never played it before, please know that you can change whether you or the pet is unleashed at any time with a 1-second cooldown. It's just, will you get the super big bonuses is the question, which is what the this icon here shows. That's what you need to know what's going on. But just knowing it can sync up with swap weapons made that much easier. The last thing to say as a con about this is this crap. If you're in a situation where you have to do this, Enveloping Haze and then Staff Ambush, you see all that? And that follows you. That puts many layers of green snot particle effects above everything on the floor. So there was multiple times that people, including myself, were slow to get out of red circles because we couldn't see them. I was blinding the whole raid and they could not see all the crap they needed to get out of. That was absolutely a con of this build. I respect the art department and I think that this whole theme was creative and it's kind of cool, but in practice, it's gotta go. And yeah, I could turn down my spell graphics to nothing so I don't see it. But if the problem is if the default is people see it and other people join your group, they will make mistakes because you're their healer. And that's a bad feeling, That's almost as stupid as stealthing your teammates so their attacks turn off, But no, who would do that, right? So that, it would be, I would say, the biggest, stability is a big con, but also blinding your teammates is a huge con. So that is really unfortunate. And it is for that exact reason, I stopped using this off cooldown. On fights where I didn't need to save the projectile block, for a while, I was using Enveloping Haze every time it popped up just for more damage. And I stopped because it was making people make mistakes. So I was like, all right, I'm going to use it when I need the projectile block and not for, the extra tiny bit of damage it provides as a support. But yeah, with that, I think that's everything. Overall, provides plenty of healing, all of the essential boons. It doesn't have stability, so you got to make up for that by learning what attacks you can block with your 2 sources of Aegis, one from Stone Spirit and one from the White Tiger. It provides way more damage than a typical support. Highly mobile, has lots of ways to revive people, so it's good in pugs. Downside, you're blinding your teammates in real life with green snot on a constant basis. But that is my thoughts on Mace Heal Untamed. It's basically got what it had before, plus a couple more boons from when it was Staff. You got any questions, problems, thoughts, concerns, or feedback? If you think I did something wrong, put it in the comments down below. I'll fight you there.